Serbia isn't the kind of country that tries to make you feel comfortable. It doesn't greet you with polite smiles, doesn't rush to make acquaintances, and doesn't try to tell the most beautiful story right from the start. It's a place where people speak frankly, look directly, and live honestly, sometimes sounding harsh but rarely fake. Amidst ancient monasteries, war fortresses, smoky cafes, and a pace of life so slow it seems almost static, Serbia emerges as a country accustomed to the bumps of history. Not perfect, not noisy, but authentic enough to compel you to look closer. Number 1. A country not for those who live life in a hurry. Located in the Balkans, at the crossroads of Eastern and Western Europe, Serbia is a landlocked country with an area of approximately 88,000 kilometers squares and a population of over 6.6 million. This geographical location has made Serbia a meeting point, a site of conflict, and an overlapping of various empires, religions, and political ideologies for centuries. Once a central figure in the former Yugoslavia, Serbia possesses a unique history. Here, the past is not confined to museums or textbooks, but is present in everyday life, like layers of old paint on a wall, each scraping away revealing another layer underneath. The landscape of Serbia changes rapidly by region. In the north, the Vojvodina region opens up to vast, flat plains where the eye seems to have no end. Moving down to the central region, then to the east and southwest, the terrain becomes more rugged, with hills, valleys, and forests drawing closer to the horizon. The three major rivers, the Danube, Sava, and Tisa, act as the lifeblood of the country, creating a rhythm of life closely intertwined with their flow. In particular, the section of the Danube flowing through the Iron Gate or Đerdap region gives the impression of a compressed river, making the landscape even more dramatic and impressive. Serbia's climate is distinctly varied by season and altitude. Mountainous areas experience distinctly cold winters, while valleys exhibit different characteristics, thus forming a diverse ecosystem. The country boasts numerous Ramsar-designated wetlands, vast forests containing valuable timber species, and many nature reserves. A highlight is the Uvac region, where the river meanders through gorges and is associated with the conservation of the griffin, a characteristic bird of the Balkans. In addition, rare animals such as Balkan turtles, the rarely seen Danube salmon, red deer, and brown bears inhabit Tara National Park. Ecotourism in Serbia is not just about enjoying the scenery, but also about the opportunity to encounter rare ecosystems not found elsewhere in Europe. Serbia is the world's largest exporter of raspberries, but not a small number. In 2012, nearly 95% of all raspberries consumed globally came from Serbia. This is why Serbia is known as the Raspberry Kingdom of the world. Number 2. Belgrade and the art of living with history. Perhaps architecture in Serbia quite clearly reflects the spirit of its people. Unhurried, unpretentious, yet possessing enough character to linger in memory for a long time. Unlike many European countries where buildings are preserved like museum artifacts, Serbia allows history to continue living alongside the present. Old stands beside new, East meets West, Ottoman influences touch Austro-Hungarian influences. Old socialism coexists with modern minimalism. There is no rigid order, yet somehow everything harmonizes. When strolling through Belgrade, the most noticeable thing is not perfection, but contrast. A rough gray concrete block can stand right next to an elegant Art Nouveau villa. Old Yugoslavian apartment buildings with patchwork glass balconies, clotheslines draped across, and climbing plants covering the walls are not considered ugly. They are vibrant, honest, and do not try to hide the life within. Kalemegdan Fortress, with a history spanning over 2,000 years, is located at the confluence of the Danube and Sava rivers and is one of Serbia's most prominent historical landmarks. From here, Belgrade is visible in its entirety. The fortress has Roman origins and was built and expanded over the centuries under the influence of Byzantine, Ottoman, and Habsburg periods. In Novi Sad, the architecture is softer in tone. The old town is neat, with pastel-colored houses, red-tiled roofs, and white-framed wooden windows. The Church of Our Lady of the Virgin Mary rises high in the central square, bearing the familiar features of continental Europe. Opposite it is Petrovaradin Fortress, once known as Gibraltar on the Danube, a late 17th century Austro-Hungarian military structure. It is famous for its Petrovaradin clock tower, a clock with an unusual reverse design. The long hand indicates the hour, the short hand indicates the minute. The clock face uses Roman numerals, has a radius of over 2 meters, and requires daily watering to operate. It is impossible to mention Serbian architecture without also mentioning the Yugoslav heritage. Large-scale socialist structures, from monuments and libraries to train stations and museums, although many are dilapidated, still leave a strong impression with their bold forms and the heavy sense of history they carry. Number 3. Serbia. History written in clashes. Historically, Serbia was a significant medieval kingdom in the Balkans, remaining an important territory from very early antiquity. Around the 3rd and 4th centuries, present-day Serbia was the birthplace of 18 Roman emperors. This number accounts for nearly 1/5 of all Roman emperors in the empire's history, highlighting the region's crucial strategic role when the Balkans were part of the ancient Roman power structure. During the Middle Ages, Serbia reached its peak around the 13th and 14th centuries under the Nemanjić dynasty. This was a period of great monasteries being built, laws becoming more clearly defined, and Belgrade and other cities beginning to play a strategic role between Eastern and Western Europe. However, this very location also made Serbia a hotbed of regional conflicts. By the end of the 14th century, the Ottoman Empire had expanded deep into the Balkans. The Battle of Kosovo in 1389, though its military outcome was not entirely decisive, became a symbolic milestone in the collective memory. Following this, Serbia gradually lost its autonomy and eventually fell under Ottoman rule. This period lasted nearly 5 centuries. Throughout this time, Serbs did not have an independent state, but they maintained their Orthodox faith, preserved their Slavic language, and preserved the memory of a nation that once existed. This was not through constant rebellions, but through perseverance in daily life. At the beginning of the 19th century, Serbian uprisings erupted, paving the way for self-governance and then complete independence by the end of the century. Serbia gradually expanded its territory and political influence, eventually becoming the center of power of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia after World War I. Nominally, this was a major step forward in national standing. However, in reality, leading a multi-ethnic federation always brought with it subtle and difficult-to-resolve tensions. The 20th century brought further challenges. During World War II, Serbia was occupied by Nazi Germany and suffered heavy losses in terms of human lives and infrastructure. After the war, the country entered a socialist period under the leadership of Tito. Serbia was not under direct Soviet control, but it operated within a centralized model where stability was prioritized over individual freedom. This was a period of order, but not complete openness. When Yugoslavia disintegrated in the 1990s, Serbia again fell into war, economic sanctions, and international isolation. This culminated in the 1999 NATO air campaign, which lasted for weeks and targeted military and infrastructure objectives. No ground troops entered the territory, but the consequences were clear, both material and psychological. To this day, in Belgrade, demolished buildings remain untouched, uncovered, and unexplained as part of the urban landscape. Therefore, if you ask whether Serbia has ever been invaded, the answer is many times, in many different forms. But what is even more remarkable is how Serbs remember that history. They don't make a fuss, nor do they portray themselves as victims. Like someone accustomed to strong winds, they know fatigue and pain, but have learned to stand firm. Perhaps it is this series of experiences that has shaped Serbia into the quiet, resilient, and unshakable nation it is today. Number 4. The quiet pride of Serbian women. On the pedestrian boulevards of central Belgrade, Serbian women appear as a blend of past and present, but not in a nostalgic, ostentatious way. They don't rush. Their posture is upright, their gaze deep and calm, both graceful and subtly proud. Many are tall, some exceeding 1.70 meters, with familiar Slavic features like high cheekbones, straight noses, and dark or brown hair gently falling over their shoulders. They don't need elaborate attire to attract attention. A long coat, leather shoes, and a neat, disciplined presence are enough to draw notice. But when Serbia enters folk festivals, that beauty takes on another layer. A figure-hugging yelek is worn over a bright-colored zubin, with a neatly arranged traditional apron in front, sometimes accompanied by a headscarf or shawl. Overall, it's not ostentatious, but rather an aesthetic statement, discreet, refined, yet very proactive. The most striking aspect isn't the concept of beauty, but the sense of power. Serbian women are strong in a quiet way. They control their own pace of life, set their own boundaries, and walk as if they don't need permission to be free. This steadfastness isn't just a demeanor on the streets. Serbia has a legal framework for gender equality and participates in many international commitments related to protecting women, especially in the areas of safety and combating violence. Looking at UNDP figures from 2023, the percentage of women participating in the workforce in Serbia is 51.5%. Women hold approximately 34.8% of the seats in parliament. In the age group of 25 and over, about 91.2% of women have at least a secondary school education. These figures show that Serbian women are not just present for aesthetic reasons, but are truly shouldering the burden and running life in a society still heavily influenced by tradition. You might see them leaving university lecture halls, books in hand, headphones on, walking past Kalemegdan Fortress, a place that has witnessed countless battles. That very moment creates a distinctly Serbian image. History is heavy, yet the women walk lightly and confidently, as if the future is something they have decided to take control of themselves. Number 5. Strange but very Serbian things. In Serbia, there's a rather pleasant culture shock that many tourists don't expect. Many families have a special day dedicated to their patron saint called Slava. This isn't just a party, but a true family ritual. On that day, the home becomes a gathering place for relatives, friends, and neighbors. Everyone who enters is welcomed like family. You might think you're just dropping by briefly, but in Serbia, that briefly often extends into the entire evening. Serbia has a unique cultural characteristic, celebrating Christmas twice a year due to the use of 2 calendar systems. The Serbian Orthodox Church still follows the Julian calendar, which is 13 days behind the Gregorian calendar. So Orthodox Christmas falls on January 7th according to the modern calendar, while Catholic Christmas is on December 25th. Despite administrative life and New Year following the Western calendar, Orthodox Christmas remains the most important and sacred holiday for Serbians. Then there's the writing system. Just walk a few streets in Belgrade, and you'll see the city speaks in 2 writing systems. Some places use Latin, some use Cyrillic, and sometimes the same information is written in both. For tourists, it feels like stepping into a different country in just half a minute. For locals, it's simply something they've been used to since childhood. Another thing that surprises many is how Serbs draw you into their community without asking. Kolo is a circle dance. Everyone holds hands, with a steady and simple rhythm. You only need to stand and watch for a few minutes, and a hand will reach out. That's it. You're in the circle. Serbia has the ability to turn strangers into friends in just a few steps. If you like things that are both ancient and alive in the present, they have the guzzle. This is a rather rustic-looking instrument, but it's accompanied by epic singing that can pull history out from behind stone walls. It's not a cultural display for show, but a way of storytelling that makes you feel like the past is still sitting somewhere in the room, listening with you. Belgrade also has a very Serbian-esque humorous detail. There's a famous kafana restaurant named after just one letter, a question mark. When you invite friends out for a meal and say, "Are we going to the question mark tonight?" It sounds like a joke, but it's actually the address. In this country, even a punctuation mark can become a trademark. A detail that sounds like a ghost story, but is actually part of the culture. Serbia is one of the places most closely associated with the word vampire, a concept later known worldwide as vampire. This word was introduced into Western European texts in the 18th century when Austro-Hungarian soldiers returned from the Balkans with terrifying stories of real vampires. Number 6. Serbs don't try to please anyone. Serbians aren't the type to make a good first impression. They aren't effusive, rarely offer polite smiles, and don't bother with excessive formalities. Their gaze is usually direct, their voice is firm and clear, sometimes sounding like they're arguing even in casual conversation. But with more time, you'll realize it's not coldness. It's a habit of being genuine. Serbians don't try to be likable. They're more accustomed to standing firm within themselves than adjusting to please others. This spirit is partly shaped by history. Many generations grew up amidst war, division, crises, and regime changes, learning to take responsibility for their own lives. They aren't used to excessive daydreaming, nor do they expect the world to be lenient. Instead, they are persistent, sometimes tough, but very rarely superficial. When a Serbian considers you a friend, it doesn't come from flowery words, but from a quiet, enduring presence over the years. Education in Serbia clearly reflects this spirit. Schools don't try to appear modern or flashy. Classrooms may be old, Blackboards may be scratched, but the curriculum is rigorously structured. Children receive a strong foundation in subjects like mathematics, science, languages, and history. There's little room for laziness, but showing off achievements isn't encouraged either. Learning is seen as a responsibility, not a place to impress. At the university level, this spirit becomes even more apparent. Degrees are important, but not for showing off, they are for practical use. Serbian students often appear very down to earth. They might sit for hours in a cafe with books and black coffee, speaking just enough, debating when necessary, and remaining silent when there's nothing more to say. Learning here is more of a slow, gradual process than a race. Serbian education doesn't produce people who like to speak loudly or act overly confident. It produces people who understand where they stand. They are not afraid to admit they are not good enough, nor are they in a hurry to prove otherwise. There is a very practical kind of humility in the way they learn and live. Therefore, despite their outwardly quiet and reserved demeanor, Serbs possess a depth that is hard to ignore. Unpretentious, imperfect, but with a unique weight and not easily forgotten. Number 7. Slow-paced life and silent pressures. Life in Serbia is a blend of slow pace, rich history, and subtle pressures that outsiders may not immediately notice. Walking through Belgrade, strolling past sidewalk cafes in the old town, and hearing the faint sounds of brass instruments, the first impression is often one of ease. The city isn't hectic, the people aren't in a hurry, and everything seems to allow you to slow your breathing. This very rhythm makes Serbia seem like a relatively easy place to live, but to maintain that slow pace, life behind the scenes demands considerable adjustment. The Serbian economy currently spans over $70 billion, enough to maintain basic stability, but not enough to create a sense of abundance. Growth exists, but it's unevenly distributed, and that gap is often filled by individual adaptability. This is evident in major cities like Belgrade, Novi Sad, and Niš. Here, life is more modern, opportunities for concentration are more abundant, and young people appear to be constantly on the move. They dress neatly, are tech-savvy, speak multiple languages, and spend much of their time in cafes or late-night libraries, where they study, work, and observe the world around them. Most students and young people balance their studies with part-time jobs. Typical incomes range from $400 to $500 USD per month. This isn't high, but it's somewhat balanced by relatively affordable living costs. A meal out usually starts at around $5, coffee under $2, and rent in suburban areas ranges from $250 to $350 per month. Therefore, life in Serbia isn't built on abundance, but on resourcefulness. A slow pace of life isn't because things are easy, but because people choose to reduce stress in order to keep moving forward. They don't rush, they don't set their expectations too high. They adjust their pace of life to progress slowly but steadily. Number 8. Serbia, between peace and unease. But that doesn't mean life is easy. In rural areas, the pace of life is even slower. Villages in Vojvodina, Šumadija, and southern Serbia still maintain familiar routines. Mornings are spent picking vegetables in the garden, afternoons at the market selling produce, and in the evenings, people gather together, sipping rakia or homemade wine, recounting old stories passed down through generations. Nightlife also has its own rhythm. While not as bustling as Belgrade or Novi Sad, many small cafes remain open until around 10 or 11 p.m. A few bars in larger towns still attract young people. A cup of black coffee usually costs only about $1.50 to $2. A simple dinner ranges from $5 to $10, and local beer or wine is often under $3. On the narrow streets, the soft yellow lights cast a gentle glow, people stroll slowly, and a few groups of friends sit drinking and chatting, creating a quiet but not entirely static rhythm of life. It is precisely against this backdrop that the imbalances become more apparent. Schools in many places lack funding, hospitals are dilapidated, and young people leave without plans to return. Many families rely on remittances from their children working in Germany, Austria, or Switzerland. Euros are exchanged for dinars to cover living expenses during the cold winter months, from firewood and heating to essential food. Even so, one thing Serbs seem not to have lost: their dignity. They may face hardship and frustration with the authorities, but they maintain a quiet pride in the way they live. Simple meals, evenings spent telling stories, and a slow pace of life are not a form of endurance, but a choice they have made for themselves. Number 9. Serbia isn't as easy to live in as you think. Every country has its dark sides, and Serbia is no exception. Behind the tranquil afternoons in Belgrade, where cafes are always crowded despite the lack of urgency, and the echoes of folk music from the Zlatibor Mountains, lies another reality: a considerable degree of skepticism among the population towards the system they live within. According to Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Perception Index, Serbia scored 36 out of 100, placing it outside the European average. This is a regularly monitored figure, not mere speculation. In daily life, corruption is often mentioned as an informal cost in familiar areas such as construction, healthcare, education, and administrative procedures. Without harsh accusations, simply hearing people talk about the speed of paperwork is enough to understand why transparency remains a sensitive topic. The most obvious consequence is the exodus of people. According to World Bank data, Serbia has experienced negative net migration for more than 10 consecutive years. Each year, tens of thousands leave the country, mostly young, well-educated people. Graduates fluent in English and German, software engineers, and young doctors often choose Germany, Austria, or the Scandinavian countries. This isn't because Serbia lacks manpower, but because the labor market outside is seen as more transparent and predictable. Conversely, those who remain, particularly farmers in Vojvodina, sometimes witness agricultural land being converted into industrial zones without much public disclosure. The projects remain legal on paper, but the decision-making process is rarely clearly explained to the local community. A frequently cited example is the collapse of the roof at the Novi Sad train station in 2024, which officially killed 15 people. The media reported on the events continuously for weeks. Investigations were announced, but no high-ranking officials resigned. Then, public opinion gradually subsided, just like many other events that had occurred before. Number 10. Serbia lives with natural disasters. Serbia isn't a name that frequently appears on the global disaster map. However, recent years have shown a marked increase in unpredictability. Floods, prolonged heat waves, and wildfires are no longer rare occurrences, but are recurring with increasing frequency, putting direct pressure on life and the economy. Floods remain a recent memory. Unusually heavy rains have caused the water levels of major rivers like the Danube, Sava, and Morava to rise rapidly, especially in low-lying areas and riverside towns. In some recent rain events, thousands of households have been temporarily evacuated. Many transportation routes have been disrupted, bridges and roads have been damaged, and tens of thousands of hectares of agricultural land have been affected. While the loss of life hasn't been significant, the economic damage extends over several seasons, especially for farmers. Summer presents Serbia with another challenge. 2025 saw several consecutive heat waves, with temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius for days in some areas. Prolonged droughts caused river levels to drop, increasing the risk of forest fires. In just a few summer months, hundreds of fires of varying sizes were recorded across the country, concentrated mainly in the central and southern regions. Some fires spread rapidly due to strong winds, forcing the temporary closure of forests and the simultaneous deployment of hundreds of firefighters. According to official statistics, heat waves and forest fires caused several fatalities, primarily due to extreme weather conditions and accidents during firefighting. The numbers weren't large, but each summer brought about specific casualties, enough to remind us that the risks are real. These phenomena rarely become large-scale disasters, but they recur frequently enough to become a part of life. People monitor weather forecasts more closely, are accustomed to recommendations to conserve water, and accept that crops are no longer entirely under their control. It's noteworthy that the social response is often quite quiet. When floods come, neighbors help each other reinforce structures and clean up. When wildfires break out, volunteers appear alongside firefighters. Less fanfare, more practical action. Perhaps because they are accustomed to living amidst historical upheavals, Serbs don't dramatize natural disasters. They acknowledge the damage, adjust, and continue living with a quiet resilience in the face of an increasingly unpredictable climate. Number 11. Landscapes that make Serbia slow down. Heading toward the city center, Belgrade emerges at the confluence of the Sava and Danube rivers. These two major rivers create a landscape that is both poetic and majestic. Perched atop a hill overlooking the confluence, Kalemegdan Fortress stands tall, bathed in the golden hues of sunset. At the foot of the hill, Riverside cafes, walking paths, and floating docks offer locals a chance to enjoy cool evenings, relax, and sip local coffee or beer. Traveling north, Novi Sad unfolds with its tranquil life along the Danube. From a hilltop opposite the city, Petrovaradin Fortress overlooks the red-roofed buildings and the winding river. A peaceful viewpoint by day, the city lights reflect on the water at night, creating an atmosphere that is both ancient and vibrant. Southern Serbia, however, is a different world altogether. The Zlatore and Tara mountains rise majestically, their forests dense and wild. The air is fresh, the pine trees whisper all day, and traditional wooden houses with sloping roofs emerge from the morning mist. Lake Perućac is crystal clear, reflecting the mountain peaks and drifting clouds. The locals live at a leisurely pace, preserving their cultural traditions and readily offering guests a warm cup of rakija on a chilly highland night. Not far away is the Uvak Gorge, famous for its almost perfectly curved river winding between towering cliffs. From above, the turquoise river traces graceful curves across the pristine plateau. This is also home to the bald vulture, a species once on the brink of extinction in Europe. Along the Danube River, the Đerdap Gorge, also known as the Iron Gate, is considered Serbia's greatest natural wonder. The sheer cliffs, deep river, and surrounding dense forest create a landscape that is both majestic and mysterious. Perched on the cliff face, the colossal statue of Decebalus, the face of the ancient king carved directly into the rock, seems to silently guard the history of this border region. Number 12. Places you can only find in Serbia. Serbia is recognizable by its network of ancient monasteries scattered throughout the country, such as Studenica, Đerdap, and Sopoćani. These gray stone structures, Byzantine domes, and faded frescoes are not only places of worship but also repositories of national memory. Walking through the long corridors or sitting quietly in the monastery courtyards, one easily feels a sense of tranquility, as if history is slowly flowing through each stone. But Serbia is not just about tranquility. The Guča Brass Band Festival offers a completely different atmosphere. Music resonates throughout the western part of the country, creating an unmistakable experience. From a small competition in 1961, Guča has become a festival, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors every August. People in traditional costumes dance, drink rakija, and draw you into the celebratory whirlwind no matter where you come from. Between those two extremes, Serbia also possesses another, less flamboyant but globally influential identity. Serbia is the birthplace of Nikola Tesla, the scientist who laid the foundation for the alternating current (AC) system that powers much of the modern world. In Belgrade, the Nikola Tesla Museum houses his documents, experimental models, and scientific legacy, becoming a popular stop for science and technology history enthusiasts. In Mokra Gora, there's Drvengrad, a wooden town created by director Emir Kusturica in the early 2000s as a film setting, which has gradually developed into a cultural center and the venue for the Kustendorf Festival. It's both a film set and a real village with its own life. Moving on to Stara Planina, you'll encounter Gostuša, a famous stone village known for its houses built from local materials using dry construction techniques. Simple and unassuming in appearance, it is precisely this resilience that has allowed the village to endure for centuries as a silent testament. In Perućac, the Vrelo River takes on a different character. Approximately 365 meters long, this river is known as the Year River. It's so short that it's only a few minutes' walk, yet it has a strong current, flowing through the village and ending in a small waterfall that empties into the Drina River. Not far away, Serbia also boasts Temistica River Canyon, a river gorge with striking red cliffs, often compared to a miniature version of the Grand Canyon in Colorado. And if you enjoy places shrouded in mystery, Mount Ratanj in the east is a prime example. Its pyramid-shaped peaks are associated with numerous legends about UFOs and mysterious energy. Serbia doesn't ask you to believe or deny them. They simply tell the stories, leaving you to decide for yourself what truly lies behind those rumors. Number 13. Serbia and its uncomplicated flavors. Serbian cuisine is deeply intertwined with daily life, rich in flavor, meaty, and heavily reliant on local ingredients. In small kafana restaurants or markets, you'll quickly recognize familiar dishes, not just food, but flavors deeply rooted in people's memories. Borek is one of Serbia's most beloved dishes, consisting of thin layers of phyllo dough filled with various ingredients, then grilled until golden brown. The Guardian ranked Borek 5th on its list of the world's best street foods in 2012. Cevapi is practically a national dish. Almost everyone who visits Serbia tries it at least once. Grilled minced meat skewers, fragrant with smoke, are served with soman flatbread, fresh onions, and sometimes a light, creamy kajmak, grilled pork belly. A portion of cevapi typically costs around $3 to $5 USD, a quick and easy lunch option, and enough to satisfy your hunger while wandering around Belgrade or Novi Sad. Pljeskavica is often jokingly called the Serbian hamburger. Ground beef, pork, or lamb is seasoned and grilled, served with onions, ajvar, and kajmak. A portion of pljeskavica in a restaurant usually costs around $4 to $7 or $6 to $8 with vegetables or potatoes, making it convenient and filling. Sarma is a familiar traditional dish, especially popular in cold weather. Cabbage or grape leaves are wrapped around a filling of minced meat, rice, and spices, then simmered in a rich broth. A portion of sarma at a family-run restaurant or small eatery usually costs around $5 to $6, warming and easy to eat. Ajvar is a sauce made from red peppers, sometimes with eggplant and garlic, often served with grilled meat or bread. A small jar of ajvar, bought at the market or supermarket, costs about $2 to $4, depending on whether it's spicy or sweet. And of course, there's rakija, a strong fruit liqueur, usually distilled from plums or grapes, present at almost every gathering. A glass of rakija at a kafana bar is usually only about $1 to $2, while a small bottle to take home costs around $5 to $7. Rakia is recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. These dishes are not just for satisfying hunger. They are how Serbs preserve history, memory, and kinship through simple, earthy, and very ordinary meals. Number 14. Not too expensive. Living in Serbia, you'll soon realize the cost of living is moderate. Not exorbitant, but not surprisingly cheap either. In Belgrade, rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the city center typically ranges from $430 to $640 USD per month. Prices are more reasonable in the suburbs, and the space is also more spacious. Utility bills, including electricity, water, heating, and internet, usually fall between $107 and $160 per month, enough to keep the house warm in winter and provide a stable connection year-round. When eating out, a cup of coffee typically costs between $2 and $3. A simple meal ranges from $8 to $10, while local beer is usually only $2 to $3 a bottle. If you shop for groceries and cook your own meals, food costs of around $215 to $320 per month for one person are still quite reasonable, especially if you prioritize local ingredients. Internet and mobile phone bills add around $16 to $27, while activities like gym memberships or light entertainment typically range from $85 to $160 per month. Overall, if living independently in Belgrade, monthly expenses usually range from $900 to $1,700, depending on your choices of accommodation, food, and entertainment. In smaller cities or rural areas, this cost can drop to around $600 to $1,000 per month, enough to live comfortably and still have room for relaxing coffee on the balcony. In general, Serbia isn't excessively expensive, but it's still worth considering your spending. And in that slow pace of life, you'll appreciate the value of every penny spent, from roadside kafanas and farmers markets to evening strolls along the Danube River. Number 15. Traveling to Serbia and things you should know. If you're visiting Serbia as a tourist, there are a few small but noteworthy details that will make your trip much smoother. First, there's the way people communicate. Serbs aren't used to polite smiles or superficial conversations. They speak directly, maintain eye contact, and speak in a firm voice. This isn't a sign of rudeness, it's simply how they are. Don't mistake silence for coldness. Once you get to know them, they are very enthusiastic and loyal. Cash still plays a significant role. In Belgrade or Novi Sad, cards are widely accepted, but in smaller towns, family restaurants, or local markets, cash in dinars is more convenient. Exchanging money isn't complicated, but it's best done in larger cities. Regarding time, Serbia isn't rushed. Cafes usually open and close late. Dinner typically starts after 7 p.m. If you arrive too early and find the cafe not yet ready, that's perfectly normal. When conversing, Avoid sensitive topics like politics, the Balkan Wars, or Kosovo, unless the local initiates the conversation and you truly understand the context. These aren't topics for superficial conversation. Serbs remember things for a long time. Smoking is quite common, even in cafes and bars. If you're sensitive to smoke, choose outdoor seating or ask before entering. In terms of safety, Serbia is generally a peaceful country. Violent incidents targeting tourists are rare. However, like any other city, you should still be mindful of your belongings in crowded places, especially in tourist areas and on public transport. Finally, prepare yourself for a slow pace of life. Serbia doesn't try to impress, doesn't chase after tourists, and doesn't exaggerate things. Instead, they invite you to sit down, have a coffee, watch the river flow, and take your time to observe. If you accept that pace, Serbia will gradually unfold in its own unique way, quiet and unassuming, yet profound enough to linger in your memory long after you've left. If you enjoyed our journey exploring Serbian culture and history today, don't forget to like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel. This will help us continue bringing you more in-depth journeys and little-known stories from around the world. Thank you for watching until the end of the video, and see you on our next adventure.